Well, good morning, everybody. I just thought I'd get on here this morning. I can't get out in the yard and do a regular video, but I had a rough night. I was in pain with my side going down my hip, but it seems to be coming up my leg and coming back up toward my spine, which that's what I want it to do, rather than go all the way down to my foot with pain. Because that means that it's kind of working its way back up. And under the circumstances, I can't get in to see my doctor without an appointment. And I don't know when I can get an appointment. It's not going to be probably today or tomorrow, that's for sure. And the person I talked to at the minor emergency clinic, they said they could not give me any pain medication or anything like that because they didn't know what was wrong. They couldn't take an MRI or a scan, and they advised me to go to the ER, which I really don't want to have to do. But we do have another clinic in town that's open 7 days a week. She said they might possibly treat you or give you something for pain or a muscle relaxer, but she says, I doubt it. She said, I think your best bet would be just to go to the emergency room, because even if you get in to see your own doctor, he's probably not going to do anything without an MRI or something. So we come right back to the issue that nobody can do anything without scans or MRIs to pinpoint exactly what's going on with my lower back or my spine. So my only bet would be to go to the emergency room. So I don't know. I'm kind of caught in between. I'm not sure which direction to go to right now. But I do know for right this moment, I'm trying to give my back time with some rest, that hopefully it might work itself out. Because, I mean, let's face it, I've got ongoing problems with my back and my neck. I had injuries back in 1983 that I've dealt with. I've had surgeries on it, and it's just been an ongoing problem. I just haven't had this problem before. And I know this problem stemmed from the injury where I re-injured myself at Lake Stone Terrace when I worked there. That's the reason I'm not working there anymore. They sent me in for a couple of weeks of therapy, physical therapy. The doctor that treated me there knew I needed more. Workers' comp was not going to pay for any more. So he released me without even telling me that. I found this out later, that he thought I still needed more treatment, or that I needed more things done. But he released me because workers' comp would not pay anymore. They refused to pay for therapy. So, and like I said, I went to my doctor. He took an x-ray, and because nothing showed up on the x-ray, he said there was nothing there and he let it go. Well, spinal injuries, nerve damage, stuff like that does not show up on x-ray. You have to do an MRI or a scan to figure out what's going on in that situation. So that's where I'm at right now. I mean, worst things come to worst, it's probably going to be a trip to ER, if I can make it there, because I'm here by myself. So anyway, I wanted to get on here, let you know what was going on, let you have a cup of coffee with me this morning. Fix you a cup of coffee, have a sip, and we can at least talk about gardening, even if I can't get out there and do anything. And it rained most of the night. I woke up during the night and it was just pouring down rain. I think right after I went to bed and laid down, I could hear thunder in the distance, and it sounded like it kept getting closer and closer. And I thought I heard rain at that point, but I must have dozed off to sleep because I woke up later and it was just pouring down rain, which we need, and everything's wet out there today. So that compost tea that I managed to get to my plants yesterday is going to do a world of good now since it rained on it as well. So my garden's going to get another growth spurt today. So by the time we do another garden tour, it's going to look a lot different than it did the last garden tour, put it that way. But yeah, you know, if you're gardening and if you've been watching along with me, if I haven't answered any questions lately that you might have, look back through my videos. I've got over 300 videos, and it's all on gardening, all on composting in place, building your soil, planting your seeds, getting your garden growing. So if you don't find an answer in the recent videos, go back to some of my earlier videos, like a year ago, and I'm sure you'll be able to find your answer in some of those videos, because I think I've done a video on just about every aspect of gardening the way I do, you know, with composting in place and planting your seeds and table scraps, building totes, building buckets, your compost tea, why it's so important. Because unless you want to buy expensive fertilizers to put to your plants, your garden, compost tea is the best thing in the world. I mean, you can throw table scraps in compost tea in a bucket of water, let it set for a couple of days. In this heat, it will turn to compost tea in the matter of just a couple of days. Go ahead and water your plants with that. I don't put meat products in my compost. I don't put meat products in my compost tea. I only put like paper peelings, fruit peelings, vegetable peelings. I do put some table scraps, but not meat. I will put it in my compost tea bucket. And then, like I said, after a day or so, it's going to break down in the heat that we have. And it's going to make the best compost tea in the world to water your plants. That's food for your plants. It's fertilizer, natural fertilizer for your plants. So, and if you want to use a fertilizer or plant food, Miracle-Gro, whatever, feel free to do so. I'm not telling you not to. But I found that it's cheaper for me and it's better in the long run for my plants just to use my compost tea. They grow and produce a lot better for me when I plant in totes and buckets and big pots by just using compost tea. And occasionally I'll use fish emulsion. You know, I've got a bottle of it that I've had for several years. Once in a while, I'll put a capful of that in my compost tea and water my plants with it. Or sometimes I'll get worm castings. They're pretty expensive, but, you know, one bag goes a long way, because you can put just a little bit of that in your compost tea and water your plants, and it works wonders. Just like I was telling everybody to get a bag of black cow manure. And every once in a while, you don't do it every time. Unless you want to, it's up to you. It's not going to hurt it. Is to put maybe a half a cup of black cow manure in your 5-gallon bucket of compost tea and just stir it up. Water your plants with it. That makes a good liquid fertilizer to go with your compost tea that's going to be the best in the world to water your plants with. But, you know, like I said, if you can't afford the fertilizers, you can't afford the black cow manure, you can't afford worm castings, you can't afford fish emulsion. Like I did in one of my videos, I went fishing and I caught a couple of catfish. I brought them home and I threw a catfish each in my buckets. I just put one fish in each bucket. And in a matter of days, in this 110 degrees weather we had last summer, that fish broke down in a matter of days in that bucket. And I watered my plants with it. That made some of the best fertilizer you could ever put to your plants. I mean, years ago, right from pioneer days when people were planting gardens, they didn't have modern fertilizers. They didn't have fish emulsion. They didn't have worm castings. They didn't have any of this. So what they do a lot of times, if they had a place they can catch fish close by, they caught fish, and when they made their garden rows, they literally threw a fish down the garden rows, covered it over, and that's where they planted their crops in. That fish broke down in a matter of days or so and made fertilizer for their plants that they grew in that row. So why not do it today? Catch you some fish. If they're too small, you don't want to eat them, those are perfect. Throw them in your compost tea bucket. You might say, well, that's gross. It's going to smell terrible. Well, yeah, the first day or so, it might smell pretty bad when you open that lid. But I guarantee you, after 3 or 4 days, you're not even going to know there's a fish in there. It'll break down. The compost tea will settle down, and it'll turn to compost tea. Water your plants with it. Best in the world. You may end up with a fish skeleton floating in the bottom of your bucket eventually. I haven't emptied mine yet, so I know the fish bones are still in the bottom. But one of these days, I might take the broken down matter that's still in the bottom of that bucket and take it all out, put it in a pot when I build my soil, and use it literally like compost in the, toward the bottom of my buckets or my totes, and put the whole fish carcass, the bones, the fish bone carcass in the compost tea. It's not going to hurt it. Everything else about that fish is already gone. You've already watered your plants with it. So, yeah, do your research. Check back years ago how they used to plant their gardens. And some people will still do it today. They'll put a fish under a tomato plant, because they know that's the best fertilizer in the world. Now, if you have dogs in your yard, you may not want to do that, unless your garden area is fenced in to where no animals can get to that. Because if a dog or another animal smells that rotten fish, they can smell it even though it's under the ground. They're going to dig it up. And in doing so, they're going to dig your tomato plant up. But if you have a fenced-in garden, you can do that and not worry about the critters or the dogs getting into your garden digging it up. I prefer not to put it in my compost tea. Not my compost tea, but I prefer to put it in my compost tea rather than put it in a pot or a tote. I don't want to bury a whole fish in my pots or my totes or my buckets. I'd rather prefer to put that fish in my compost tea bucket, let it break down, and then I can water many plants with that compost tea rather than putting that fish under one plant. Which, granted, it would be the best thing in the world for that plant, but I prefer to put it in the compost tea, which is just as good. And then you don't have the danger of some animal getting over in that tote or bucket or pot and digging out your plant trying to get to that rotten fish. So, and like I said, your potato peelings, All your vegetable peelings are great for your compost tea. Dump it all in there. Eggshells, if you can dry them after you use them and just crumble them up, they're the best in the world to crumble around the top of the soil around your plant to keep slugs and other bugs from getting over to the base of your plant, because they don't cross the eggshells. And I haven't been doing that. I'm guilty of it. Last year I did a lot of it. This year I haven't. I've been throwing my eggshells in my compost or in my totes when I build my totes, when I build the soil in there. So I need to start back putting the eggshells out. If I'd have put some out around my little tomato seedlings that had just popped up, I may still have them. I don't know why they disappeared. It could have been the heat, because they came up and then they were in the heat after the rain, and they could have got scalded and it just killed them. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take those 2 pots that I planted the yellow pear tomato seed in, and I'm going to take the other one that I put my rainbow tomato seed in that disappeared. I'm going to move it basically in the shade or partial shade, and I'm going to replant a couple of seed and see what happens. Plus, I'll save a couple of eggshells, and when I see those plants coming up, I'm going to crumble up those eggshells and put it around the base of those little seedlings that have just come up, and see if that will help. And I might put like a ring around it to protect it, to keep any slugs from crawling over to them, or, protect them that way. And see if I can't get me a couple of plants, because I've never grown yellow pear tomatoes before, and I've never grown the rainbow tomatoes before. So I'm anxious to at least get one plant of each started and, see what happens with it. So that is an idea. If you've got seeds that you've been putting out and they disappeared like mine did right after they popped up out of the ground, that means some kind of bug or slug is eating it, or they're getting scalded by the sun and dying off. So you might want to, and that does happen in a lot of native soil, because there's bugs and different things that are in that soil, where if you get a potting soil, usually there's no bugs in it. There's nothing in it that's going to get to your seedling. So if that happens, you might want to try just a little bit of potting mix, potting soil, or regular potting mix that you start seeds in. That way there's no bugs or anything in it that's going to eat that plant when it comes up, and you'll have more of a chance for that little seedling to survive. Now, what the difference is between those and those pepper plants and all the other tomato seeds that I put out that came up, I have no idea. It may be just the pot they were planted in. Maybe I had more potting mix in those pots that those seeds came up and survived. I don't know. But that is an option. And like I said, I'm going to try planting a couple more of those seeds. I don't want to waste all my seeds. And right now I cannot get to the store to buy another bag of potting soil. So I'm going to have to work with what I got. I may put a couple of seeds in a different pot and see what happens. But I do want to get a plant of the rainbow tomatoes started, and I do want to plant at least one plant of my pear tomatoes. Because like I said, I've never planted either one of those before. And I'm anxious to see, how they do and how they grow here. So if you have questions please put them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer all of them. I mean, I always check my comments several times a day, so if people do have questions, I can reply to them and give them an answer. So, I don't know how long I've been on here, but I haven't drank my coffee yet. And I hate it. I got out and I managed real slowly and carefully trying to get a little bit of compost tea to my plants yesterday. But it took me a long time to do it. And in between times, I had to come in the house and sit down and either lie down or sit down and rest my back, because my leg and hip would start hurting so bad that I did have to just come in and rest. And then after I got all of them watered with compost tea, I just came in, showered, laid down in the bed for several hours because my back was hurting so bad by then. I didn't think I was even going to make it to take my shower and shampoo my hair because I was hurting so bad. I was one time afraid if I got in the shower, I wouldn't be able to get out. But I did. I managed. And I got in there and I laid down for a couple of hours. And when I got up, I was still hurting, but not as bad. It had eased up quite a bit. So like I said, I'm going to try to get it a couple more days, see what happens. If it doesn't get considerably better, then I'm going to have to start strongly thinking of going to the ER. Because the way my hip is, my side is, it travels from my ribs down my side, down my leg. And the way it is, if I manage to get out to the emergency room and actually get out of the car and get into the emergency room, I don't think I'm going to go anywhere else for a while. It's too hard for me to try to walk. And sometimes when I try to walk and I put weight down on my leg, a pain will shoot down my leg and I almost lose my balance because I can't put my weight down. So it's scary. And if you're trying to walk from your car to the doctor's office or from your car in the parking lot up to the emergency room and you don't have anything to hold on to, it can get pretty tricky. I had to bend over a couple of times and just put my hand down on my thigh, my leg, and try to balance my weight on my leg for a second or two before I could try to take another step. And it looks pretty bad trying to do that. People look at you like, well, what is your problem, you know? But, you know, you can't help it when you're hurting. You do the best you can. And I definitely do not want to go call an ambulance to come pick me up at my house and drive me to the emergency room. No way. I will drive myself. I have had problems with my back before where I'd get my back out a little bit and it would cause a pain down my leg or something. And I'd work with it. And after a few days or a week, you know, it would finally straighten itself out. So I'm hoping that's going to happen this time. I don't know. I think I was literally bending over too much in the garden because a lot of the stuff that I do is on the ground. And the only way I can get to it to do anything with it is to bend over. And it opens all the vertebrae up my lower back. And I've had surgery back there. So it causes problems when you're constantly bending over like that. That's one reason I prefer to plant in totes and, you know, big pots, especially so I can elevate them up and get them up off of the ground a foot or so I can stand up and I can work with my totes. That's one thing I like about my spring garden, my pink totes, is I've got them up on that on those blocks with the T-post or the fence post going across that they're sitting on. That way they're up to where I don't have to bend over like that. I could stand straight up and work with that tote. And I want to get all of them that way so I don't have to constantly bend over. And I know I'm not going to be able to get every single one of them, at least not anytime soon. So just got to be careful. And it's not easy when you got a back and neck problem, an ongoing injury. Even though you've had surgeries for it, it always causes problems. Surgery is not a 100% instant cure. I mean, it'll make you feel 100% better, but then you still got to watch what you do. And even though I thought I was being real careful in the garden, it was just the fact that I was bending over so much that triggered this thing in my lower back. So just have to deal with it. And normally I would lay down, put something under my lower back and pop it back in. And I can't do it this time because it hurts too bad to try to do that. That's one reason I wanted the painkiller, is so when I laid down, it wouldn't hurt us so bad and I'd be able to pop it back in. But yeah, every time I've tried, it hurt so bad I had to stop. So I can keep working with it and eventually get it. And I've had a chiropractor recommended to me that I've never seen before, but they say he's real good. And like I said, my doctor, my chiropractors, none of them are still here. Years ago, my chiropractor moved out of town, and then I heard later that he had a heart attack and died. So I don't have him here anymore. I don't have a doctor here that I used to have years ago. So I'm starting at square one. I've got a primary care doctor that I go to. But like I said, you've got to get an appointment. You can't just walk in. They don't take walk-ins in an emergency like that. If you call them and tell them that, then they'll just refer you to the affordable care clinic that takes walk-ins, or they'll just tell you to go to the emergency room. Or you got to make an appointment and wait and then go in. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Something's got to happen soon. I can't handle much more of this. I mean, I couldn't even stand up the whole time to cook my dinner last night. I'd have to get it on and then sit down and rest my lower back and then get up and try some more. Finally, I did get some dinner cooked. It wasn't easy. I tell you, you don't appreciate having good health until you don't. You take it for granted. And then when something like this happens and you're restricted, you can't do things the way you want to do or the way you're used to doing, then you realize how fortunate you are to have good health, no spine problems, or no injuries, that type of thing. My brother had some kind of a similar problem. He had an issue with his back, and the only way he could walk was to be humped over. So he stayed humped over for a long time. He'd get out and work in his yard and do everything he had to do, but he was humped over. He could not straighten up because he said it hurt too bad to try to straighten up. The doctor he had wanted to do surgery then, but he did not want to do it. He wouldn't agree to it because he knew he was moving to Tennessee with his wife. And he said, I'm going to wait till I get moved, and then I'll have surgery. Well, I'm so glad he got moved. He had his surgery. And when I saw him at Christmas time last year, when my sister-in-law passed away. It was so good to see him walking straight up. First time I'd seen him walking straight up like that in a long, long time. And I know he felt so much better. And I told him the other day, I messaged him and I told him, I said, I know exactly what you were going through. I said, I know you're so relieved now that you don't have to hunch over to avoid all the pain in your lower back. Because I said, I woke up the other morning and I couldn't straighten up. Every time I try to straighten up when I got out of bed, it hurt so bad, I had to hunch over. And I had to bend over just to get to the bathroom. And then when I took a step, part of the time the pain shot down my leg so bad, I'd have to stop. But I can walk about 65% better bent over right now. But like I said, it still hurts, and I still run the risk of taking a step and falling because my leg gives away on me. So I don't know. And I've had such bad experiences with so many doctors. So you don't know what to do anymore. And little buddy hasn't showed up this morning. I guess he'll be here eventually. I fixed his plate of food. It's sitting there waiting. So if he does come to the door, all I have to do is open the door and put his food bowl down. Yeah, but I've got so many volunteer tomato plants. I've got other volunteer seeds coming up from compost that they look like some kind of squash or melon plant popped up. I'm going to have to wait till they produce something to know what kind of plant they are, which I love that happening because it's a waiting game. And you wonder, well, what is this going to be? What is this plant that just popped up? I'm constantly surprised at what shows up in my garden because I try not to get seeds in the compost, but sometimes you do and you don't realize it. Like sometimes there might be a hot pepper seed or a bell pepper seed or a pumpkin seed, a watermelon seed, any of that stuff that goes in the compost. Like last year, I had a watermelon plant come up. It came up in a pot that I planted a tomato plant in, and that watermelon seed went crazy. That plant went all over the backyard, all around the greenhouse, everywhere, and it started producing watermelons. And I said, well, I need to get me another watermelon this year. And I'll purposely spread some watermelon seed around and just see what happens with it. But I've already got, I don't know, 3 or 4 watermelon plants that have come up and started vining. And I know a couple of them are the crimson watermelon. And for the life of me, I don't know what the other ones are. I know I've got crimson and some other name I forgot. But I've got 2 different types of watermelon come up. So I'm anxious to see if they produce watermelons this year. Yeah, but it's the most fun in the world to buy a watermelon, drop seeds, especially if you don't know that you drop seed in a pot, and all of a sudden you got a watermelon plant going crazy. I love it. Because that just shows you these seeds, they want to grow. If they come in contact with soil, they want to grow. Yeah, and I know I'm going to end up with probably so many pepper plants along those cinder blocks eventually. With all this rain and the weather heating up the way it has been, pepper plants, especially the hot peppers, they germinate and come up better when it's extremely hot. Not only humid, but hot. Because those little hot pepper plants grow better in the extreme heat. That's why mine didn't come up till late last year. But then they started producing hot peppers. I had hot peppers going out the ears. I mean, I was picking them, making cowboy candy. I was making mildly hot chow chow with my green tomatoes. I don't know if I'll have that many this year. We'll have to wait and see. But like I said, they came up late. I had given up on them. And then all of a sudden, pepper plants started popping up in the cinder blocks. And I said, well, there's my hot pepper seed coming up finally. So it's got to be hot weather for those hot pepper plants. And I had every kind of hot pepper I could find. I had habanero, I had jalapeno, I had chili peppers, hot peppers, red hots, some I can't even think of. But I know I had about 10 different hot pepper plant out there. And then I had that bag of dried hot peppers that I showed you, that I got seeds out of the bottom of the bag that fell out of the peppers. And I planted them out there. And I don't even know the names of the peppers, but they came up. And some of them produced a funny looking pepper. And I had to look it up to see what the name of it was. But it was another hot pepper. And it came out of the bag of dried peppers that I had. Because I had dried a whole bunch of peppers and I threw them in that bag. And there's just all different kinds of hot peppers in there. So when I got the seed was all mixed up. So I planted it anyway, and I said I'd see what happened. Well, I think every one of them came up. I had hot peppers everywhere. And I've been meaning to get out there and plant some more of them out of that bag of dried peppers. See if I can get them to come up this year. But, you know, like I told you, you can buy a tomato. Take a slice, just one little thin slice of that tomato that's got seed in it. Put it in the top of a pot, covered up a little bit with dirt. Keep it watered. And you're going to have several dozen tomato plants come up. The bell pepper's the same way. Jalapenos the same way. Take the seed, throw it in a pot, cover it up a little bit, keep it watered. And there's your free plants right there. That's how I got most of my bell pepper plants out there this year. And I've still got some I've got to pull up. I'm waiting for them to get big enough to be able to pull them out and transplant them somewhere. And you know, we've been pulling up to pepper plants in that one little pot forever. I mean, every time they get big enough that I can transplant them, I'll pull them up and let the rest of them grow till they get big enough. And I've still got dozens of them in that pot. I'm not sure where I'm going to put all of them at this point. They're going to have to go in a pot with something else, that's for sure. But it's fun when that happens. Especially if you end up with seeds in your compost and you don't even know the seeds are there, and all of a sudden you got a watermelon plant, or you got a pepper plant or a squash plant come up. And you wonder, well, where did that come from? You know it came from your compost. That's the reason I say don't ever, never put Bermuda grass in your compost. Do not ever put it in your totes or buckets or pots. That's the last thing in the world you ever want to put in any of your pots to grow vegetables is Bermuda grass. That stuff will take over and kill your plants. But these other grasses, you know, if you know they don't have seed at the top, grass will work. when you're mowing, take your grass clippings. If it's not Bermuda grass now, don't use the Bermuda grass. But if it's the other grass, you can use your grass clippings, flower clippings, like I took the iris, and I've still got a bunch of the iris I can cut and stick down in some of my pots that I've got out there now. I can take my garden trowel and dig down beside the side of the plant, the pot, and stick those cuttings down in there and cover it up. And that's just as good. And you already know, if you don't want potato plants growing, don't bury your potato peelings. Put them in your compost tea bucket. If you want potatoes growing, by all means, bury your potato peelings in a tote or a pot, and you're going to have potatoes. I promise you. Well, with that, I'm going to finish my coffee, get this video posted. Just wanted to give you an update on what's going on with me and give you some more tips and tricks in your garden and tell you happy gardening. Please like, share, subscribe to my videos. Y'all have a blessed day. I'm going to take it easy the rest of the day, and I'm hoping for the best. Y'all say a prayer for me. Like, share, subscribe to my videos. Have a blessed day. See you on my next video. Bye now.